Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. We are going to make a really quick project using one piece of fabric. It's going to be fully lined. It'll be a boxy bag, of course, and it's going to have a zip on the outside of the bag. So the zipper I'm going to be using today is one of these lacy zips. So it's got a nice little decorative lace on the zipper tape there. And they're really pretty zips as well. I've used them in one of my rock and roll dresses before, which I'll show you later. But that's what we're going to be using today, is a decorative lacy zipper. You can do this project with a regular zip as well, so there's no problem with that. Where you put the zip in on top of the fabric, with a regular zip, you'll just put the zip in underneath the fabric. So it's very simple. One piece of fabric. So here we go. This is what I'm going to show you how to make today. It's a little boxy bag. We've got nice big thumb tabs on the side. Just thought I'd make something a little bit different this time. And then we have that beautiful lacy zip on the outside. And it's fully lined with the same piece of fabric on the inside. So it is just one continuous piece of fabric. This is the other one I've made. It's more sturdy because I'm using a different product for the stabilizer, but likewise I've used the lacy red zip on the outside and put the little thumb tabs on the side as well. Let's get to it. These are the pieces that I'll be using. I have a tiny strip of fusible fleece. I'm using a product called Parlan, and that's a very lightweight fusible fleece. Another piece of fabric that I'm going to use for the tabs. I have a bigger piece of stabilizer, the same kind. I'll be using Parlan again. That will be for the main body of the bag. And then I have this blue stripy fabric for the bag. And then I have this really pretty lacy zipper. First thing we're going to do is fold the fabric in half, find the center. I'll just take a little nick along the fold, which is what we've got just here. And for our stabilizer, we'll do the same. And then grab your fabric with the wrong side facing up. So we've got our printed side down on the table. Grab your stabilizer, and with the fusible side faced down, we're going to line up those notches, and we'll press that fusible fleece in place. I'll set that one aside for the moment. I'll also grab this fabric for the tab. I'm going to fold that in half lengthwise, fold that in half again, and press that, because I just want to find a crease along the center of the fabric. Open that out again, and then I'm going to place this piece of stabilizer just inside the center and fuse that together as well. All right, the stabilizer has been ironed onto the back of the fabric, and I've also ironed this one as well. Then I folded the raw edges into the center, and then I folded that fabric over once again. We'll sew down both long edges. We'll cut this to size shortly. When you take this to your iron, the best thing to do once you've centered your fusible over the top of your fabric is to fold this excess fabric over so that it sits right on the edge of your stabilizer, and you'll do the same on the other side as well. You can fuse your stabilizer to the fabric and press a nice crease in the top here, and where this crease is where your zipper is going to go. You'll notice down here there's quite a large overlap of fabric. That's because I'm allowing a lot of extra wiggle room for a seam allowance, which will happen later. You'll have the right cutting instructions on your list. So this will just be your seam allowance when we close the bag up later. I've also gone and put my label on, and I've also put my label on the other piece as well. So I've just used my fabric label here and my new faux leather label on this one. This is the outside of the bag, and this will be the inside of the bag. and I'll also be stitching the long edges of this piece of fabric as well. When you're about to put that zip in, we've got our stabilizer underneath, the excess fabric here, and then you want to make sure that you fold that excess fabric underneath before you apply the zip. Grab your zip. You can use a regular zip for this. If you were going to use a regular zip, you would put it on like this, but because we've got a nice lacy one, we're going to put that over the top. I want my metal tab to be outside the stitching area, and it just so happens that the zip is long enough that it's going to sit outside as well. So we don't have to have this one faced down, we want this zip faced up. And you want to have the edge of the fabric sitting just behind the zipper teeth. I'll put some double-sided tape down so that you can see what I'm about to do. I'll place this side of the tape onto the fabric, but I want the teeth to sit just at the very top or just above the edge of the fabric. If I flip that around, you can see the top edge of the zip, so the teeth are along the top there, and we're going to be stitching a little further down. That will allow the slider to close nice and easily. Let's stitch it in place. So I've placed the very edge of my zipper foot right next to the edge of the teeth, and I'll sew as close as I can to that whilst still sewing on the fabric. And you'll see underneath I've just caught the edge of the fabric with the thread. So that's one side done. Very pretty, isn't it? Now we can go to the other side. So with the other side we'll do the same thing. We're going to just keep that fabric folded over. And we need to bring this end of the zipper tape over to this side. So what I'm going to do to line this up is just bring the end up, line that up along the side edges here, making sure that's nice and even, and then I'll mark the zipper tape right on the very edge of the fabric just to give me an alignment point. Turn it upside down, bring this side up. Probably shouldn't have used a stripy fabric. We'll open up the zip and then place this zipper tape over the top edge of this piece of fabric. So we've got the lining section folded under, and the zipper tape will go straight over the top. And we're going to line up that little mark we've made on the edge there, and you can clip or pin or tape that across. I might as well tape it since I've already got it out. And with this one you want to make sure again that your zipper teeth are faced up, not down. So line that up on that mark I made before, and I'll bring those teeth just to the top of the fabric. Once I've done that, carefully open that out, and we're going to sew straight across here, or across this way. Doesn't really matter which way you go. And double check that your teeth are not behind the fabric. So I'm just going to have the outer fabric faced up with the lining section at the bottom. And I think I'll start at the open end. So once again I've got my zipper foot right on the very edge of the teeth. As you get to the end, just move the fabric out of the way and hold that tape in place. And whilst we're here, we better not forget to sew this one. Okay, we've done both sides now. You can close up your zip just to have a look and see how pretty that all looks. Isn't that gorgeous? So we've eliminated the need for top stitching. We've done that all in one go. And on the inside of the bag, it's nice and neat as well. With your zip closed, line up the fabric so that your zipper teeth are sitting at the top. Fold that down and just double check your notches at the bottom. Hopefully that's all nicely centered. Turn your bag inside out and pull out the lining pieces. And you'll have your separate lining. So you're basically doing exactly the same thing now as you normally would with any other boxy bag that you're making. What we're going to do now is take the center notch and line that up with the center of our zip. And we'll do that on both sides. And we will also grab our tab fabric, and we can make this as long or short as you like. I'm just going to cut off the untidy ends. Then I'll cut that in half. So now I have two pieces that are 5 inches in length, which is about 13 centimetres. Fold that in half. If you like, you can put some D-rings on this, then that way you can use it as like a little handbag or a clutch bag. I'm not going to today. So we've got the tab fabric folded in half with the raw edges facing outward. I'm going to place that in between the zip and the fabric. Clip that together. And on this side, where the opening of the zipper is, I'm going to open that up and place the pull to the center. And keeping these teeth together nice and evenly, we'll fold this one in half, place this folded edge in between the layers of fabric, and we can clip that together as well. So before we worry about anything else, we're just going to stitch this in place. My seam allowance for this project is going to be 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch, but I'm going to do half that just so that I can stitch these layers together. Flip it around. So the zipper ends and the tab have been stitched in place and they won't be going anywhere. And I've made sure that my zip is at least halfway open. At this stage you can trim off any excess zipper tape. And before we go on to the next step, I just want to mention the zips to you. With this bag here, I plan to use the same kind of a zip. Oh, that looks nice, doesn't it? I was going to use a black lacy zip, but I think I might use the red. It'll stand out much better. But got a bit sidetracked. If you want to put a regular zip, because not everybody's going to have one of these, and I just bought a batch of them to make something a little bit different for a change. You can use your regular dress zips. So where we've put this one onto the top of the fabric, you'll install these exactly the same way, except that you will put the zip underneath the fabric here. So when you turn that over the other way, you'll end up having the zipper tape on the wrong side of your fabric. Alternatively, what you can do is still place your zip faced down, and then you can bring it around the other way. But then that creates a lot more bulk in the top section. I'd rather not have that. So if you don't want to use a lacy zip or you don't have one, place your zipper tape underneath that folded edge of fabric. Of course, you would make your zip longer than this one. You can use either one of these zips. One goes on top, the other one underneath. Let's get back to this one. So we still haven't done anything with our lining yet. We do need to sew the ends together. When you're uncertain of the size of the fabric that you need when you're creating a bag like this, that's just one piece of fabric, sometimes it's better to keep your fabric length a little bit longer. And what I'm going to do here is fold this over so that it sits in line with the edge of the fabric from the other side. And I'll fold this one over. And this is especially handy if you have different size seam allowances. If I fold the raw edge back so that the fold sits right along the centre where the zip is, and this one as well, I can mark a crease in the fabric, and this will be my stitching line. So that's one stitching line, and this is the other one. So that's only if you have fabric that might be a little bit longer. So what we can do now is bring the fabric back around this way, line up these two stitching lines, so I can see the markings underneath the fabric. I'll pin that together along that marked line, which will line up on the other side. Do the same at this end. So we can sew across here and leave an opening in this section here. So we'll back stitch here and here, leave that open. Once you've done that and open the fabric out, it'll be the same size as what you have for the outer fabric. The cutting measurements that we had on the screen earlier are the correct measurements, so you should just be able to put your seams together with a 1 centimetre seam allowance as normal. This is just a good way to put your seam together when you haven't worked out your fabric to begin with. Once we've done that, we're going to line up this fabric evenly and have that centre seam line up with that zip at both ends, and then we're going to sew right across both ends. When I do this, I'm going to stitch both ends twice. Let's go and do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is close up that bottom seam, back stitch here, move on forward, back stitch here, and continue to the end. Then we're going to open this fabric out and line that up behind the outer fabric as I've just shown you. So this seam here, I'm going to press that open, line that up with the very centre of the zip, and you can trim off any excess if you want to. There's not enough to worry about, and the fabric is thin enough that it's not going to be a nuisance, so I'll just leave that. So once you have that fabric lined up evenly over the zip with our 1 centimetre seam allowance, we're going to sew from the top down to the other end. And the reason I'm sewing it twice is because I need to cut some fabric out to box the corners, and it'll help keep the ends nice and secure if I do this twice. When I get to the centre, I'll triple stitch over all of those layers. And flip it around, and we'll do the same for the other side. So I'll line up that seam along the middle there with the zipper tape, press my seams open and stitch it together. Alright, so this is the lining side. We've stitched all of those layers together. We have our little opening here for turning the bag through, and then we have the outer side of the fabric as well. We need to work out a size for our box corners, and where this opening is here, that's obviously the bottom. On the opposite side is where the zip is, which will be the top. We want to work out how wide we want the bag at the top, and also how tall we want this bag to be. The size of the box corners will also determine how long the bag is going to be. So there are a lot of things that you need to take into account when you're working out what box corners you want. So say I want a 1-inch box. So I've lined this up with my stitching line, and I'll just quickly mark the other sides. So if I fold this fabric on that line, and I'll just clip it together for the moment, and I'll do the same over here. So you can see now that the bag has reduced in size from this to this. So it'll be 2 inches narrower, or 5 centimetres, across the top. Likewise, if we fold that 1-inch line again on the end, then that is going to be the finished size at the top and bottom of our bag. So it's brought the bag in 1 inch on each side. So you want to decide how big you want your box corners to be. Do I want the size of my bag to finish here? And I think I'd like to have it about that length. If I make my box corners any bigger, then it's going to bring the length of the bag in too much, I think. Although it would make it nice along here, it would make it nice and narrow. But we're going to go with 1-inch box corners. So if you mark 1 inch from the stitching line and the folded edge, we'll be cutting those squares out. And if you're using a 1 centimetre seam allowance, then the red marking that I'm making now will be your stitching line. Let's cut out the 1-inch squares. Now we can start closing up the corners. If you want to make a mark on your fabric, just on the fold, you can pin it or notch it, whatever you prefer to do. You can notch through all of the layers to help line that up. Separate the fabric and line up that notch or the mark that you've made with the side seam of your fabric. So at the moment, I've just clipped together the outer fabric. Bring the lining around and pinch that corner and the other one out, and we'll line up this notch with the side seam. And we're going to do the same for all of the other corners. Notch that fabric out. Gets a little bit fiddly here with all of those edges sewn together, but it's actually a really quick way of doing your box corners. all of the layers together, and we'll do the other ones as well. All right, those corners are all ready to be sewn up. Let's go and do that. So once again, I'm using the 1 centimetre seam allowance. At this point, it really doesn't matter if you want to use 1/4 of an inch. Depends on the fabric that you're working with. You can go right ahead and do that. It'll just make your bag a little bit longer, higher and wider. And we'll do the other 3. Okay, let's find the opening, and we can turn this the right way out. Find where the zip is, and you can open that all the way, and that will make it easier for you to bring the rest of the fabric through. Poke out all of your corners. But before we do that, we will go back to the opening at the bottom, pinch those edges together, and we'll top stitch that section closed. So I've just got a few inches in here to close up. And we are finished. There we go, it's all done. How cute is that? So we've got our thumb tabs in here. Open up your bag with that beautiful lacy zip. Then you've got your fully lined fabric on the inside and all your seams enclosed. I've finished the black one as well, and I've put the red zip on there. This fabric started off a little bit narrower. I've used the same sized boxed corners, and I've used Peltex, which is a really stiff stabiliser, instead of the soft Parlane that I've used on this one. So I wanted to show you the difference between the two. And this one is also fully lined on the inside. And having the Peltex on this one just helps the bag sit up by itself, and it's more likely to bounce back to its original shape, whereas with this one here, all you need to do is hit it and it's going to go flat. But these would make great packing pods too. So there you go, lacy zips in a boxy bag made out of 1 piece of fabric. So didn't that turn out really well? And it was so easy to make as well. And I have to say, I love these lacy zips. They're really pretty. They just help add a little bit of interest to the bag. I went to look for my rock and roll dress, the one that's got the lacy zipper on there. Can't find it anywhere. It's completely disappeared. It was my favourite one too. But it had a really nice long black lacy zip along the back of the dress. And whilst it does look really nice on the fabric, it's actually not very practical to wear in a garment. So these zipper pulls are actually quite loose. They're very easy to open and close. And if you're going to use something like this in a dress, I have to use a safety pin to hold the pin up so that it doesn't fall down whilst I'm dancing. So I wouldn't recommend putting them into a garment that needs to be held closed. Even with the little hook and eye on there, it doesn't keep the zip in place. So for bags, I think they're perfect, but for dresses, probably not so great. But I really love these. I did put the clock on to see how long they would take. It took about 32 minutes to make the bag from ironing the stabiliser on, not including quilting, because this one I've actually gone and quilted. But if you just iron your stabiliser on from start to finish, it took about 32 minutes. I did a video using this technique before, probably about 2 years ago, and in that video we made a very flat pouch. We actually made 4 different variations from the one size piece of fabric. I'll pop a link in the description below, and I'll pin it in the comments as well, so that if you're interested in making a 1 piece of fabric bag that's fully lined, and having them finished a little bit differently to this, you'll be able to go and check those out. Now before I go, so a lot of you are aware I've got some things happening in my life. So at the end of this video, I'm going to have a 5-second pause, which will give you plenty of time to stop this video and run away if you don't want to look any further. There's going to be a 5-second pause. We're gradually going to get everybody used to the new look that I'm going to be having shortly. So 5-second pause after I've said goodbyes. Then I'll show you what I'm potentially going to be looking like in about a week or so. And if you want to know more about that, I'll pop a link below as well for my other channel where you can go and see the journey. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now. Count down 5 seconds. Okay, this is potentially how I'm going to be looking in the next couple of weeks. I actually think it's not too bad. So obviously I'm not going to have any hair. I probably won't have eyebrows or eyelashes, but I'm going to be going with lots of vibrant colours. I've only just put a rubber band in at the back there because I have no idea how to style these things. I don't know how to style my own hair, let alone one of these head wraps. But that is, I just want to get you used to the look that I'm going to be having in a very short time. I've been making a whole lot of infinity scarves and I plan on making some head caps as well. So I'll be sporting lots of different colours in the near future. So and once again, if you want to share my journey, if you want to follow my journey, I'll pop a link in the description below. So I think I kind of rock this colour. What do you think? See ya.